Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Raja Janaranjana Natira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Jaya Radhesha, Radhesha, Lalita Vishaka, Jaya Radhesha, Lalita Vishaka, Jaya Radhesha, Jaya Nitai Sachinandana, Nitai Sachinandana, Nitai Sachinandana, Gora Hari. Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Jaya Om Vishnu Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya Ashtadashat Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ki Jai Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Very well, everybody online. Today we're starting the 5th canto into the next big long adventure. Some of the most technical and coolest stuff. First half is a lot of really juicy stuff, and the second half of the 5th canto is a lot of controversial cosmology. Brenda's KO'd.
She's like, I'm gonna watch while you're ready.
So today we're gonna do text 1 through text 5 of chapter 1, canto 5. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtaprayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyutama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shavakaya Chakshurunmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Dalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dhinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Vachalam Hambum Mangaite Gin Yat Kripam Tamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Okay, so we don't have so many texts today, so I'll read the Sanskrit as well. This is text 1. Shri Rajavacha Priyavrato Bhagavata Atma Rama Katam Mune Grihe Ramatayan Mula Karma Bandha Parabhava. King Parikshit inquired from Shukadeva Goswami, O great sage, why did King Priyavrata, who was a great self-realized devotee of the Lord, remain in household life, which is the root cause of the bondage of karma, fruit of activities and which defeats the mission of human life? So first, just a little bit of backstory. We heard in the 4th canto how Priyavrata had perfected more or less his sadhana and his understanding of reality through the instructions of Narada Muni. And so now, Parikshit Maharaj, after hearing about the lineage of King Uttanapad and hearing about all of the Prachetas and all of these people, he's doubling back. And he's wondering, because he knows Priyavrata was a great king, he's wondering why he took up that line of life. Because Parikshit Maharaj's understanding is that there are two parallels. One is material life, or Pravritti Marg, and the other one is Nivritti Marg, or the life of renunciation. And so he's wondering how somebody like King Priyavrata, Maharaj Priyavrata, who at the very beginning of his life, before he took up any responsibilities, took instruction from Narada Muni and then engaged in household life for such a long time. Because he understands that King Priyavrata had come to the stage of being an Atmaram, he had come to the stage of basically complete detachment and concomitant attachment to Krishna. And so he is thinking, how is it that somebody so pure could then enjoy anything material? And so in the beginning of this chapter, King Parikshit raises doubts. And he raises two specific doubts that fall into one doubt, and then in the subsequent texts, Shukadeva Goswami answers those doubts. So this is the beginning of his expression of his doubt, where he's saying who King Priyavrata was and asking, so how is it that he could So now text 2. Nanunam mukta sanganam tadarshanam dvijakshava griheshva bhiniveshoyam bhumsam bhavitam arhati. Devotees are certainly liberated persons, Therefore, O greatest of the Brahmanas, they cannot possibly be absorbed in family affairs. So Parikshit Maharaj is saying that Maharaj Priyavrata had already become 100% purified and perfected as a devotee. So he's raising this doubt that I don't understand how he could have even taken up family life in the beginning. I don't understand how he could have done this at all. It doesn't make any sense to me. Mahatam kalviprashe uttama shloka padayo chaya nirvritta chittanam nakutumbe sprihamati. Elevated Mahatmas who have taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are fully satiated by the shade of those lotus feet. Their consciousness cannot possibly become attached to family members. So more of a support for his argument. He's saying there's no way that he can think of family and enjoy in this way after coming to the stage that he came to. Samshayoyam mahan praman daragara sutadishu saktasya yatsidir abhut krishne chamatir achyuta. The king continued, O great Brahmana, this is my great doubt. How is it possible for a king like King Priyavrata, who was so attached to wife, children, and home, to achieve the topmost infallible perfection in Krishna consciousness? So he's saying King Priyavrata on one hand was exhibiting, we see that King Priyavrata learned from Narada Muni and learned all of these things. So he should have been detached. Now we see that for thousands of years, according to the history, he was attached to family, wife, and taking care of all these duties. So King Parikshit is saying, I don't understand how these two conceptions are reconcilable. Doesn't make any sense to me. On one hand, he looks like a complete sense gratifier, and on the other hand, he's supposed to be a pure devotee. So these two things can't really flow together. How can a householder be a devotee? So this is a very nice question for us, and it's a very important question as far as the straddling of material and spiritual life. And the answer which Shukadeva Goswami gives in the 5th verse, and then Prabhupada expounds on at great length, so we're going to kind of dissect that and go into it, is very important for us to understand, because bhakti is not about doing one or the other. Most other processes in the Vedic paradigm are one or the other, which is why the prevailing mood and understanding is that you don't take up spiritual life until the end of your life, because you can't do them together, so to speak. You do some karmas, you do, some good things, you make sure you perform dharma and you don't degrade yourself, and then when you come to a later stage in life, you set everything aside because you've already done it, and you try to take up Gyanmarg or yoga, this type of thing, but they don't run together. It's a very common thing, and you'll see this, that it's still the common sentiment with Indian people, albeit people of a little bit of an older generation, because young Indian people are Westerners, so they don't care about these things at all. But if you look at people who are 40 and up in even common Indian culture, that a common objection that was often raised to the devotees is, well, why are you doing this now? You're 25. You're 30 years old. You should have a family, and then you worry about this when you later, after your kids grow up and your grandkids and you're not needed anymore. Then when you're 60, you take up spiritual life. And they consistently say, oh, I'll do this later in my life. I want to do this, but right now I'm doing this. Because it's the common understanding that these two paths don't flow together. So bhakti is a completely different thing. And this is actually why bhakti is applicable in this age. This is why bhakti works in Kali Yuga. And what this is going to do, with Sri Shukadeva Goswami's answer and Prabhupada's explanation of it, is going to shine light on the power of bhakti. That bhakti can work in spite of the fact that one is still involved seemingly in material engagements. Despite the fact that one still has to be in the world, bhakti is so powerful that one can be in it and not of it. Whereas all of the other paths, yoga and gyan specifically, they require absolute purification in order to be started. So you have to do Nishkam Karma Yoga, which means you have to work until you become completely detached from that work. And after doing that, you qualify yourself either yoga or Gyanmarg. So bhakti is a totally different thing. Bhakti can be done by anybody, any idiot or any intellectual, anyone of any kind can take up bhakti from wherever he's at, and by adding bhakti into his life, that bhakti will slowly mushroom and grow and grow and grow and grow and cloud out everything else in his life. This isn't so for any other process. So here's Shukadeva Goswami's answer. I'll just reread Parikshit Maharaj's question and then we'll read Shukadeva Goswami's answer. It's a big long chunk of prose Sanskrit, so I'll just skip the Sanskrit. So here's Parikshit Maharaj's question. The king continued, "O great Brahmana, this is my great doubt. How is it possible for a person like King Priyavrata, who is so attached to wife, children, and home, to achieve the topmost infallible perfection in Krishna consciousness?" Now Shukadeva Goswami's answer. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, "What you have said is correct." So Shukadeva Goswami, according to Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, is telling Parikshit Maharaj, both of what you have said is right. A materialist can't take up spiritual life, can't take up bhakti, can't take up Krishna consciousness, and a person in Krishna consciousness can become attracted to material things. So first he gives an answer that's going to confound Parikshit Maharaj. He doesn't really answer his question. Because his question is, I'm seeing both of these things at the same time, and I don't understand it. And so he's presenting two sides of the dilemma, and Shukadeva Goswami says, they're both right. So then he elaborates, the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is praised in eloquent transcendental verses by such exalted personalities as Brahma, are very pleasing to great devotees and liberated persons. One who is attached to the nectarian honey of the Lord's lotus feet and whose mind is always absorbed in his glories may sometimes be checked by some impediment, but he still never gives up the exalted position he has acquired. So now we'll read Prabhupada's purport and then we'll jump off into some discussion from there. Sri Shukadeva Goswami accepted both of the king's propositions, that a person who is advanced in Krishna consciousness cannot embrace materialistic life again, and that one who has embraced materialistic life cannot take up Krishna consciousness at any stage of his existence. Although accepting both of these statements, Shukadeva Goswami qualified them by saying that a person who has once absorbed his mind in the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead may sometimes be influenced by impediments, but he still does not give up his exalted devotional position. So again, if we pay attention, the undercurrent here is to establish the glory of bhakti. That's really what this whole first chapter in the 5th canto is about. It establishes the potency of bhakti and its efficacy in purifying absolutely anyone, because an absolutely pure thing, as Prabhupada would say, if you take an iron rod and you stick it in the fire, even though the iron is cold, it doesn't have any heating potency of its own, it's completely dull, it becomes exactly like fire. So similarly, bhakti has the ability to purify anyone of any place, of any upbringing, of any samskar, configuration, of any psychophysical nature. Bhakti can be interjected into that person's life and bring them to the ultimate beatitude. So Srila Prabhupada here quotes the main chunk of Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on this verse. So Srila Prabhupada says, according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, there are two kinds of impediments in devotional service. The first is an offense at the lotus feet of the Vaishnava. This is called Vaishnava Aparad. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu warned his devotees not to commit Vaishnava Aparad, which he described as the mad elephant offense. When a mad elephant enters a beautiful garden, it destroys everything, leaving a barren field. Similarly, the power of Vaishnava Aparad is so great that even an advanced devotee becomes almost devoid of his spiritual assets if he commits it. Since Krishna consciousness is eternal, it cannot be destroyed altogether, but advancement may be checked for the time being. Thus, Vaishnava Aparad is one kind of impediment to devotional service. So, Shukadeva Goswami's first answer to Parikshit Maharaj is, okay, your dilemma is that somebody who is spiritually realized cannot be attracted to material things. And somebody who is attracted to material things cannot be attracted to spiritual things because they're outward facing. These two people, somebody can't be both of these things at the same time, in other words. And so Shukadeva Goswami's answer is that by the power of bhakti, anyone who takes up the practice of bhakti leaves material life. So there's no question of material life for him anymore by taking up bhakti. And actually, as Srila Prabhupada is quoting Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, And as Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains in many other places in the Bhagavatam, the devotee is on a completely different trajectory after taking up bhakti. This is the glory of bhakti. Potentially after chanting the holy name once, reading one syllable of the Bhagavatam, this can take effect. But at the very least, we understand that this means after the stage of initiation. That's when you can be absolutely certain, because it's coming from the mercy of some other Vaishnavas. It has nothing to do with you, has nothing to do with your qualification, has nothing to do with anything that you did, so to speak. Purely on the basis of the mercy that you get when you take initiation, that you're on a completely different trajectory. And metaphysically, the world works different for the Vaishnava. Metaphysically, everything that happens to him comes from three places. Now, it's not quoted here where the first one is, because it's not in reference to the conversation. But the first place is the happinesses that a devotee experiences come from Bhakti Devi herself. All of them, seemingly material or whatever. If you have taken up devotional service, you're chanting Hare Krishna every day, you're reading the Bhagavatam, you've taken shelter of a guru. Certainly, if you've taken shelter of a guru, this is an absolute 100% certainty according to the Bhagavatam. Then the happinesses you experience are coming from Bhakti Devi herself. Because a devotee is no longer has adhikar to be involved in the material world. He no longer has adhikar to get the results of karma, because karma is an impersonal system which simply doles out what one has reaped. And Krishna is not interested in that for his devotees. That is a system which is meant to, in an indirect way, cause the jivas to be introspective and think that this world isn't worth living in. And then they're able to look at the Vedas and see if they want to improve their lives. But once bhakti is infused into somebody's life by the mercy of a devotee, the path moves a lot faster. And actually, as Prabhupada says here, and as Shukadeva Goswami has said in the verse, one is not able to remove whatever progress is made in that life. And one's progress is on a totally different path, as I've said. And Sri Vishwanath quotes these other two things. So first, the happiness comes from bhakti. Then the question arises, where does the suffering come from? Where does the suffering that the devotee experiences come from? If it's not karma, because he's not under time or karma anymore, he's not under the influence of the material goodness anymore, where does the suffering that a devotee experiences come from? Where does the suffering that Prahlad experiences come from? That Edwin experiences? Where does the suffering come from? Sri Vishwanath explains, and Prabhupada echoes, that the first place the suffering comes from is aparad. So the devotees, they're no longer under the strict kind of ropes of karma. They're not, this means, and this is also said in our Shastras in many places, that once a devotee takes up spiritual life, he doesn't have to worry about anything from the past. He's gotten a clean slate. You don't have to worry that, oh, I've taken up bhakti, and now there's something that maybe 50 lives back, I was a horrible murderer who, did so many horrific things, whatever it was. You don't have to worry about that because it's been cleared. But where in place you do get suffering from is aparad, particularly the two mahat aparads, of which one Prabhupada quotes here, Vaishnava aparad. The two great aparads are Vaishnava aparad and committing sins on the strength of chanting Hare Krishna, which means very specifically thinking, I can do this bad thing and I'll chant tomorrow morning and it'll nullify this bad thing, with the express intent of cheating and continuing to do the bad thing and continuing to chant and not worrying about rectifying the bad thing. So of all the aparads that one can do to the holy name, which they are 10 in number, according to Padma Purana, these two, one cannot have absolved simply by repentance. These two, one has to experience the results of those aparads, because that's how grave they are, and that's how Krishna shows that you shouldn't do this. These have to be experienced, and then you can be forgiven for them. So we're encouraged very strongly to avoid doing these two, because really they're the height of cheating. This one, number 7, committing sins on the strength of the holy name, is the absolute height of cheating. It's taking the nicest thing possible and use it in order to facilitate the fact that we are not actually interested in what the thing is for. And then the one that Prabhupada is quoting here, Vaishnava aparad, comes down to basically the most prominent way we can personally anger Krishna, because these are his devotees. These are his loved people. And so he doesn't take kindly. And he also, because one is already a devotee, he wants somebody to get over this. He's very stern about this. If you, everybody has a father. If you remember, everybody's father has some tics, something that, I know not to do that or my dad's really going to get angry. That's the one thing that's going to set him off. So for Krishna, this is the one thing that will really set him off. And again, there's still love because you're still his son, you're still his devotee. So he's going to rectify you in a way that's going to help you get over that, but still it may not be so nice. So we're encouraged to avoid Vaishnava aparad, but still, in the purport here, Srila Prabhupada quotes this: Krishna consciousness is eternal. It cannot be destroyed altogether. Advancement may be checked for the time being. So even this, we have to understand, devotees are never able to move backwards. By doing these aparads, you can check yourself and make your life difficult, because you won't be able to move forward for some time. But you can never remove your progress. It can never be destroyed. It can never be undone, because it's something that was given to you. It's not something that you acquired by your own merit and then you can decide to give up. It was a bit of mercy, and you're not able to actually forfeit it even if you want to. I found this very nice because I've always been under this impression by reading the philosophy elsewhere, but I've never seen Srila Prabhupada make an explicit statement about this. And I've seen Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur speak in regards to this, but never so explicitly as Prabhupada has enunciated it here, that even Vaishnava aparad cannot completely destroy one's bhakti, which is something we hear often as a way of inspiring us to not do it. But there's another thing here that, again, it shines the glory of bhakti and the mercy of Krishna, that even if you are the worst person, Krishna is going to work with you and fix you and help you to move closer, because his devotees have given you mercy, and his devotees have moved his heart by saying, Edwin's a nice guy. Some devotees said, hey, this guy Edwin, Krishna, you should pay a little attention to him when he chants, because he's a nice guy. And even though Krishna's thinking, I'm the super, I know everything, he's done so many things, what good does he have? But the devotees are affectionate to you. And so Krishna thinks, okay, they love you, I love them, I love you. This is how we work psychologically anyway. You meet someone, if somebody that you already care about introduces you to them, then you're going to like them. You're going to think, oh, this is the friend of my friend. And you'll immediately invite them in. You'll invite them to your dinner table immediately. They can sit with you, be with you like this. And I bring this example up all the time. Say you had a kid, Edwin. You have kids. So your son, if you brought your son here, and then say the three of us cook together, and it's a great time, and we have a lot of, we really connect. And then afterwards, your son goes to the bathroom, and I lean over and I say, Edwin, I love hanging out with you. You're such a cool guy, but your son is just intolerable. I really want to hang out with you, but just please, just don't bring him around anymore. It's just, you could no longer be friends with me. Even me saying that, you're probably like, oh, Ujjwala, because it's just, he's in your heart. And if you speak unkindly or treat someone badly that's in somebody's heart, whoever's heart that person is in, they got no love for you anymore. So Krishna is like this with his devotees. Luckily, he's not petty like us, so he'll still have love for his immature devotee if he disrespects another devotee, therefore he rectifies them. But, so the main point is that these are the ways, and the other aparads as well, that one can incur some suffering as a devotee, because a devotee doesn't just get random suffering from karma. He doesn't, and I didn't mean random, I mean impersonal suffering. Because the suffering that somebody in the regular world, and by regular world I mean under the strictures of the regular world, the suffering that they undergo, it's many times very, very cruel. I mean, it's totally just and deserved, but we're not looking for justice. I always will remember this. One man came to the Harinam in New York, and he was distraught. He took a book, thankfully, but he was completely distraught. And I asked, what's wrong? Can I help you? what's going on? Are you okay? And he said, no, man, I'm not. Like, my life is, I don't want to live. And then he told me what happened. The day before, he was walking down the street with his girlfriend. He crossed the street. It's in New York, so traffic is nuts. She crossed the street behind him. He wasn't looking at her when he crossed the street. Maybe he ran because it's New York and it's crazy. He ran and she didn't run fast enough. Finally, he turned around. She was pinned to a light pole. Gone. Out of nowhere. They were lovebirds. Yeah, the kid was like 23. You know, just nearly senseless. Obviously, we understand because we understand the system of karma that this happened because of something she did and he did, and there's a whole web of reaction that comes from people's previous actions. But it's depressing because you don't know that experientially. We can know it theoretically, but theoretical understanding of that isn't enough to blunt the pain of it. And people are going through this. Your life just falls apart. You have a business, you're doing great, whatever, and then all of a sudden, karmic switch, it's over. Your business has failed, you're bankrupt, you're homeless. You talk to some homeless people on the street, a lot of them, yeah, I owned a business, I owned 4 restaurants, I was doing great, you know, I had 2 houses, I had a yacht. Now he's begging on the street. This is the way karma works. So devotees, they don't have to worry about this type of fear because they're under a totally different place. They're under a totally different lifestyle, totally different metaphysical way of the world. This is where devotees are. This is very inspiring for us because this lets us know that no matter what I do, no matter what I go through, somebody has my back, Krishna has my back. And we have to keep that in mind. We have to hear this message over and over and over in order to understand that actually I have the beautiful right to be an eternal optimist. And then that's also what we're inviting people into. You know, we don't tell them that in the beginning because it's a wild message, you know, that if used wrongly, well, for one, if you use it wrongly, you're being immature and then you'll just incur aparadha and make yourself suffer. So there's no real way to take advantage of this because then you're just going to suffer for it. But we're inviting people in to have that type of security. When one becomes a bhakta, it's sunshine every day. It's really sunshine every day. And that's freaking, I don't know about you guys, but that's nice, man. It's something to be meditated on in the dark times, in the hard moments, because they're certainly going to be there. But what are those hard moments? Those hard moments are literally Krishna saying, either you got to rectify yourself, you're doing something wrong, or the next thing I'm going to read from Srila Prabhupada, which is the second place suffering can come from. They're the direct hand of Krishna, which isn't a chastisement, but it's actually an encouragement to move forward. There's one beautiful verse in the 10th canto, which was one of Prabhupada's favorite verses, actually, which is 1088.8. This is the reason he finally took sannyas. Yasyaham anagrinnami harishe taddanam shana tatodhanam tajantyasya swajjanam dukha. This is Krishna speaking to Yudhishthira Maharaj. Yudhishthira Maharaj says, "Oh Krishna, why is it that Lord Shiva's devotees always have opulence and your devotees always seem to be so poor?" And Krishna answers very simply. First he tells a story, but then he answers very simply. Actually, Yudhishthira, I'm not interested in my devotees having wealth because I'm interested in them having love. And he says, therefore, Yasyaham anagrinnami harishe taddanam shana. Gradually I take away everything they have materially. So much so, tadodhanam tajantyasya swajjanam dukha. So much so that their families give them up. They become so wretched. But then what is the next verse? The next verse is harishe. He says, harishe, I take away, harishe, so that I can then do what? I can give them something real. I empty them of their material possessions so that they can have hands full to receive a real gift. So Krishna also takes proactive measures in our lives, even when we don't want him to shake us and say, this isn't really what you want. This isn't really what you're going for. This isn't really the thing you're striving after, and I'm not going to let you stop. And Prabhupada echoes this very beautifully in Nectar of Instruction, which I've said before, was one of the most difficult I read early on. And Prabhupada says that Krishna consciousness is so nice that once having begun, even if one doesn't want to, one is forcibly dragged to the finish. And this is because Krishna is always invested in his devotees. He always knows, I want to give them what they really want, even if they're not acting like they want it right now, even if they're not striving for it, even if it's literally just a conception that they feel like they can't attain anymore. Krishna is constantly organizing circumstances to encourage us to move towards that. And again, this requires meditation and contemplation in the moment when bad things happen to us. Because when we understand this clearly, we don't have the excuse anymore of failings and obstacles and mistakes and all of these things. Because we know that actually we are couched by such a strong force that's encouraging us to move forward that we literally just have to be mature enough to see that this is actually mercy. I lost my house, somehow that's mercy. I got cancer, somehow that is mercy. Because that's the mercy of my Gurudev. Because that's the system I'm under. This isn't just some reaction to some karma, to some thing like that. And we should never direct this at other people. We should never direct it at other devotees. Because that would just be distasteful to chastise somebody for not seeing like this. This is a personal message. Because I'm the only one who can really know and get like true confirmation on that in my own life. This is a personal message. That I have a duty to introspect on my sufferings and my problems and really see them through and look, is this, like, what is this? What is Krishna doing here? What is being orchestrated in my life? How is this an opportunity for me to advance? One thing I very much appreciate that stuck with me that Deva Madhava said way back when I was in the Harinam ashram. I say way back, like it was 4 or 5 years ago. But in the beginning of my spiritual life, he said that if we don't see every second of our lives as an opportunity to advance in Krishna consciousness, every person that we meet, everything that we run into, every obstacle, if we don't see that, then we're atheists. Because we're doubting that, because this is an ontological fact for the bhaktas. We're doubting that Krishna is creating a perfect situation for us. And that's the beauty of it. Even if we screw it up, Krishna makes a perfect situation, and we say, no, that's dumb. And we run the other direction. We go left or we go right when we're supposed to go left. Then Krishna goes right in front of us and uses that mistake to build another situation. That's as perfect as it can be. It's just as perfect as the last one. So we're like running in a zigzag like this, and Krishna's in front of us, orchestrating situations for our advancement. That's what it means to be in bhakti. That's the glorious power of bhakti, and that's how much Krishna cares about his devotees once they've been introduced. That's redundant. That's how much Krishna cares about his devotees. So this is what we hear from this particular section, and Shukadeva Goswami is going to go more into that, which I think Lokaram will take up tomorrow. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts, comments, questions. We have some stuff in the chat box. We can, if there's anything live, we can do that first. Chat box. Got a bunch of Hari Bols and Hare Krishnas and Hari Haris. And Ananda, our dear Nanda Murari, is given a couple quotes from a book I'm reading right now called Everything Belongs, is related to situation Priyavrata is facing, especially in its lesson for us to take away. The edges of our lives, fully experienced, suffered, and enjoyed, lead us back to the center and the essence. Thinking about how our past karma, strictly meaning activity, creates habits of aparad that show up even after we take to bhakti. So not directly being affected by sins from the past, but rather our continued perpetuation because of offensive mental habits. Yeah, that's a really nice point. So when we say that one is freed from karma, then we're not saying that one is absolutely freed from all his impressions. So karma means specifically, in this context, the reactionary force, which is doling out the results of one's activities. A devotee is no longer going through that thing in an impersonal way. But the devotee still has impressions in the chitta and a personality based around what he's done previously, and he'll still act on the basis of those things. And those things cultivate aparads. Because if we're already acting, as Ananda Maharaj said nicely here, in an offensive way, because that's just the way we're existing, then we're going to be incurring offenses and we're going to be suffering at the hands of those offenses. That's what it means to be a sadhaka bhakta. We're not free of offenses. We can't taste the holy name. We can't taste the Bhagavatam all the time. And so then we suffer, which largely that's the suffering a devotee experiences, because a devotee can't experience material life nicely either. And anyone who's been around long enough you'll have an experience, you'll realize that some people bloop and then they come back and sure enough, they say it's not the same. I can't do it. It doesn't work the same way. I remember a very compelling story by Radhanath Maharaj. Srila Radhanath Maharaj was telling a story about one of his disciples who had blooped ostensibly for like 10 years. And then he came back to Maharaj and he said, Maharaj, I did it. I was a big executive and I was going to parties and I was sitting at these parties and I was saying, why can't I do it anymore? Why can't I enjoy the way they're enjoying? Seeing all these people at parties and just, having fun and doing whatever they're doing and just losing themselves. A devotee can't lose himself in the material energy. As much as he tries, because he has some knowledge and because he's gotten that mercy, he's never going to be able to go 100%. 70%, 80%, maybe 99%. But that nagging understanding that this is not going to be fruitful is always going to be there. So the devotee, we have to realize that we actually only have one direction that we can go. So this is a really nice point, Ananda. I appreciate this. Because that's another thing, we then kind of make it two-dimensional and set the whole thing aside, because we say, oh, well, I'm supposed to be free from karma, but I still have my impressions and all of this. But from my understanding, what karma means here is it just means the reactions and where the reactions are coming from. For devotees, the reactions are coming from these three places, Bhakti Devi and these two types of Krishna's mercy. So three places that a devotee's reactions come from, whether good or bad. There's no more reactions from karmic life for a practicing Vaishnava. Not even practicing. For someone who is at the latest taken initiation, and at the earliest, because that's the potency of the holy name, which we'll hear from 5.135, and was given in 3.33.6, and a lot in the first canto, devotee cannot experience material life in the same way. And the power of the holy name or the Bhagavatam is that potentially, as we hear in the Jama Lila also, from the first chanting of the holy name, all this can take place. But you can't be sure of anything until you've taken initiation. If you've taken initiation in a past life, you're already in that situation. And the beginning of this life was literally just tailor-made circumstances to bring you back to the percentage that you were at so that you could then take it up again. So in this life, you were never under the influence of karma. Very important to understand. Okay, Deva has a question. What if we see someone describing the results of their own inaction as Krishna's mercy? So this goes along with what I had already said. In one way, this goes with Ananda's question as well. Not question, but his comment, that we have our own kind of mental ways of being, and we have all of our samskars still intact because we still have material antakaranas, material subtle bodies. And so when someone is doing this, when they're just not wanting to move forward, or really when you say in action, what I think is to take it even a step further, because the only real action that we can do is desire. That's what we do, and then everything moves around that desire. The material energy moves according to the desires of the jivas and according to the sanction of the Paramatma. So inaction, in the deepest sense, really means an unwillingness to understand the situation as it actually is. Because I can be acting and doing things, but if I'm doing that in lieu of the way I know I should be doing them, then that's also inaction. Now, if that boils all the way down to somebody who literally isn't moving, who literally is doing nothing, and then saying, oh, that I don't know if I've seen so many people say that that's Krishna's mercy. Usually what I see is this comes from a place of a lack of understanding, and then thinking, well, I can't do anything. because I'm not pure enough, which a lot of times comes from like the misunderstanding that I'm too much underneath all these other influences to be Krishna conscious. But I think the answer here is that one has to understand that Krishna is always making a perfect circumstance for one to advance in spiritual life. Krishna is always making the exact right setup for me to move forward. And it's up to me to develop the maturity to understand that and to move forward with that. And if I don't, then I am the one who's hurting myself. And there's no one else to blame for that. And that's awesome, because that literally means that I'm the only one who can get in my way. And everything else and everyone else. Srila Sridhar Maharaj, who was Prabhupada's godbrother, who Prabhupada really very much respected, he said the environment is completely friendly. You know, it's the neophyte and the materialist more poignantly who thinks the environment is against me and fighting me and holding me down. As a Krishna Bhakta, the environment is completely friendly. There's a verse in the 11th canto that says that if one blindfolds himself and ties his hand behind his back and runs forward on the path of bhakti, he'll never trip, he'll never fall. He'll be perfectly fine. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says this means seva aparads. It means all mistakes because of ignorance. It means any problem that one could have as far as a deficiency. If they just move forward because they understand to the greatest of their capacity that this works and that I'm going to come to the end of this thing, then they'll be protected and they'll learn more, because what will they be doing? They'll be ready to see and go forward. It's not a willing ignorance. So that's I don't know if that does justice, Deva, or if you have a further clarification, but that's what I understand, is that it requires that introspection to look and be mature enough to say, okay, this problem is not just a random result of something I did 100 lives ago. This is a lesson, and I need to be ready to learn it. And if I don't learn it, if I'm not ready to learn it, then that's my fault. Sri Radha Devi has something. Hearing this class, I'm thinking, sign me up. Reinstating one of the reasons why I signed up in the first place. Krishna is super merciful. Jai, that's the hoped outcome. That's I personally like to meditate on this, and I always appreciate when it comes up. And I was overjoyed when I saw this morning that this came up as what I got to speak on. I actually stole this verse. I was supposed to do 1 through 4, but number 5 is the answer to the 4 questions, and you couldn't really talk about them without number 5, so I just hijacked it. And Lokram, please forgive me. But this is super inspiring because it's super practical, like you said. It's one of the. It's very, very much like it needs to be meditated on when we're down, because a lot of times we're down. And chant and ellipses, and in that period of ellipses, which is a lot of stuff in bhakti, we have to meditate on this stuff to understand that no, it's bright. Happy is coming. And happy is here a lot of times in the way of understanding what here actually means. So, do we have anything in the room? Comments, thoughts, questions, corrections? We got nothing else online. Oh, nothing else online. So we'll stop here. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vaishnava Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hope everybody has a wonderful day. Vanchakalpa Trivascha Kripa Sindhu Devacha